And let's just pin your videos. Spotlight. And we are good, almost ready to go. Now we spotlight our, and then we spotlight me last. Okay, cool. All righty. Good. All right. Wow, it's doing the transcripts. I think I need to stop the transcript. We don't need a transcription. That's in case later on. Sometimes you can do transcription so that when you upload the video on YouTube, you can have people that can't hear but might want to read what went down. But maybe, you know what? Should we let's try it. Let's give it a shot. Maybe promote diversity. Let's keep it. I'll keep it. Yeah, so let's see how many people we have as of now. Okay. Oh, there's still a lot of folks that are not here yet. I think sometimes the time difference gets some people. I had someone in Japan that wanted to join. And they sent me a message. And I wrote back, I said, it's going to be 2 a.m. your time. Is that too late? So I don't know. I've tried. I was trying to get at least the people in the US like time to join because that's where I have more people. But yeah, I didn't think Japan would be interested. So maybe that could be, we could have a special Japan session where we start at a very odd hour, I guess. Because I think if it's a bit later at night, maybe like maybe like 10-ish at night, probably that would be morning in Japan. Then like late night. So someone's in the morning, someone's in the middle of the day. Yeah. We'll take one more minute and then we'll get started because I think anyone that drops in late can always catch up on YouTube. But thanks for taking your time to show up. Lamin and Awa. I'm messing up your Saturdays, so don't hate me.
No problem.
I have a request if possible.
Pardon me?
I have a request if possible until everyone joins.
Cool. Yes, please. Please.
I've met Lamin before, but I've not met the two of you. I'm just wondering if you can maybe introduce yourself and say what you do.
Don't worry, Seiko. We've not gone into introductions yet. Just allowing a few more people to join, but do not worry. We'll make sure everyone is introduced, including Lamin, so you'll get to hear something else he never told you, maybe some secret gossip or something, which we don't know. Yeah. All right. It's 6:05. I think we'll just go ahead and get started because sometimes the conversation gets a bit intense, and I don't want to keep anyone here more than the time that they have to give me, right? So at the 1 hour mark, we will stop and see if both of you are still okay, because maximum we end 1.5 hours, hour and a half. So in an hour and a half, an hour 25 minutes, because 5 minutes have gone. So in an hour 25 minutes, if you have that to spare, then that's when we officially end. But if you have somewhere to be at the hour mark, we can probably take the conversation a bit further. And then if we have to do a part two, we will do a part two, because sometimes you find from the audience that there could be other possible panelists that have different opinions, that have things that they could share as well. So we'll give them a platform. So we may be requesting a part two. So yeah, so let's see what happens. Anyway, let's go ahead and begin the introductions. Welcome to Open Tech Convo. I am sitting Omar Lowe, currently working with the ITC as an enterprise consultant. I'll give a little bit more information since Seiko wanted to know a little bit more about me. So I'm an L&D professional, work in learning and development, being in learning and development and education for more than 15 years. So currently I work with the ITC and also with Innovate Gambia. So we develop learning programs, we develop entrepreneurship accelerator programs, employee development programs. So anything that has to do that can help someone or help their business go forward, that is something I love to do. So, and this platform is basically just kind of an extended extra arm to everything that we're involved in. I don't know if you know, but Awa is my older sister. Malik's on the call as well. Yeah, you know, they say charity begins at home. So if I need a finance, I got to knock next door, right? So then I met Lamin, and but anyway, we'll get them to introduce themselves. But basically, we're all in one way or another involved with the startup, economy, and we want to move the digital economy in the Gambia forward. So that's basically why we're here. We're trying to promote conversation that whether you're a startup or you're a small business or even an existing business, a veteran, you can always benefit. So we try to ask the questions and bring you the people that maybe could be potential collaborators or mentors or just possible partners. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to just work together. I know that the time we have to talk is not that much. That's why we just select a topic and then we talk. So this happens every Saturday, same time, 5 p.m. Gambia, 6 p.m. UK, 1 p.m. US Eastern Standard Time. And as you know, 2 a.m. Japan, Tokyo, Japan, if you're in Japan. So yeah, so I will not say too much because today is not about me. I'll allow Awamary and Lamin to introduce themselves to everybody that's participating. And then from there, we will begin the Q&A. We all, I know, have some questions. Lamin, don't worry. It's not just questions for you. You can also ask questions for the audience. So it's a conversation, right? So two-way street. Everyone can ask everyone anything they want, as long as it's in terms of managing money and finance for startups and small businesses, which I think is a very, very important topic because there are lots of startups that tend to start making money and think they already made it. And they're like, oh, what do I do with all this extra money I have? Should I start investing outside and not looking at what I currently have and how I can reinvest that money into my company and grow it? So there's lots of, finance challenges that exist for startups and small businesses, especially in the Gambia. I mean, lots of people go through all the way through high school without really learning how to manage their own money, how they budget. It's almost like it's not existing unless you're doing a commerce course, which I think that lots of schools should think about for their to teach people even about retirement. I mean, how many of people that graduated from Gambia knew about retirement, like what they should do to work towards a retirement? I mean, I know I didn't. And I finished 12th grade. I graduated high school, Form 5, whatever. But still, I didn't hear anything about retirement. I mean, and that's something I think you have to start early. You know about it early enough, you can start making plans. So anyway, not to take too much of your time, I will allow you guys to, let you guys introduce yourselves, share anything about your career or your personal life, whatever you feel like you want to share or highlight. And then once you're done, we'll go ahead to Q&A. And from there, the conversation will normally guide itself. So thanks again for coming, and sorry for disturbing your Saturdays. And glad to have you with us. So we'll let go in alphabetical order. So A goes first and then L. Thanks again. I'll be muted now.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Awamary Lowe-Khan, and I am the founder of Innovate Gambia and also the Woman Boss. Hopefully, you all can hear me very well. Currently in Spain right now. Grew up in the United States, but then did my elementary and high school in the Gambia. About 3 years ago, I founded Innovate Gambia, and so that really pushed for me to relocate from the United States to move to Spain, where it's actually closer to go back and forth from the Gambia and Europe, going back because of the children and the education, etc. My background is over 20 plus years as an executive, working in the finance sector, in nonprofit innovation, entrepreneurship, leadership kind of sector in the US. And let's see what else, built innovation entrepreneurship centers and across the United States, one of the pioneers there. I was also the founder of Black Entrepreneurship Week, the first innovation center, entrepreneurship center in North Carolina in collaboration with an HBCU, which is a historically Black college or university. And so when I decided to come back was, pretty much it's like the United States had blessed me so much, and then I acquired so much knowledge. Why not come back and kind of share what I learned? And so that's how we founded Innovate Gambia and the Woman Boss. And both of them really focus on elevating, nurturing economic development, revitalizing economic development. And really, the Woman Boss just focuses on women only and young girls. And then Innovate Gambia, it really is definitely a broad spectrum, where we founded also the first tech hub, which is the Disruptive Lab, that focuses on entrepreneurs and elevating their progress. So I'll stop there. Lamin, I'll pass the baton over to you.
Thank you. Oh, very impressive profile. Yeah, hi everyone. Very excited to be here with all of you. I am Lamin, Darboe. I'm calling from Stockholm, but born and bred in Gambia. I actually finished both my high school and did some college studies. And after that, I worked for a bank in the country within the credit sector for about 4 years. And it was 2012 that I moved out of the country. First to Italy to do my undergraduate studies in finance. And after that, I worked within the finance department of a telecom company in Italy for quite some time. And then work as a consultant in Ireland. And in 2019, I moved to Stockholm to do my master's in finance at Stockholm School of Economics. And now I'm an entrepreneur working on a startup in Stockholm here. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have two entrepreneurs, and so that's really good. So you have an idea of what startups go through, and what small businesses go through, when we're dealing with finance. So I guess, my first question, and I'll ask a question, and I'll let the participants ask questions. But my question to both of you is, from your experience, right? What do you think is the importance of managing money in a small business, or finance basically in a small business?
Do you want to start, Awa? Should I?
I'll let you go first, Lamin.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I think finance is super important for a startup. I think it's one of those things that it's a make or break stuff for startups, because obviously, no matter how good or how brilliant the idea is, you have to be able to fund it and move from ideation to kind of having something that's tangible. And obviously, in some cases here, you need to get some more resources that you don't have internally in order to build that product that you want to build, or kind of do some of the processes that you want to do. But in addition to that as well, and something that most of the time kind of get lost in the conversation, is the fact that as an entrepreneur, you have to survive, you have bills to settle. And whilst working on your startup, there is not necessarily kind of that additional cash flow coming onto you where you can finance yourself. So I think that's why it's super important to think about finance even before you start, because it makes a lot of difference. If you understood the situation quite well, then you can plan ahead of it, and you can know what for example, what's your burn rate, how long can you go without earning income, and sustain yourself within the business. So I think it's super important, and then it becomes even more important as you get some funding inside the company, whether it's external or it's internally generated from your customers. Because one thing that makes startups different from big companies is that your cash flows are not necessarily very stable. And so when you plan, you have to plan around that, and so that you don't get yourself into commitments that are more long-term or that requires a more stable cash flow than your cash flow might necessarily be. Yes.
Thank you for sharing, Lamin. Oh, you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you made very valid points, but just to reiterate is like that sound financial management really is the heart of every business, right? So without knowing your cash flow, without knowing your expenses, without knowing investments, you really don't have sound financial management. And you do see that most businesses fail because of that. That's the number one reason why most businesses fail, because they're not managing their finances properly. And so that there's a lot of factors that you can go into it. And I'm sure we'll go into the advices that we want to give for entrepreneurs. What are the things that they need to do to highlight investing back into their company? I think you highlighted some of that, saying when you were talking earlier that, you'd spend it. You take it and you're just like, okay, I'm rich now, let me go ahead and spend it, rather than looking at creativity and reinvesting back innovative processes, et cetera, paying themselves, so on and so forth, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. So yeah, that will be just a little bit added to what Lamin just mentioned.
Okay, thank you both. Anyone in the audience want to add anything? Okay, remember, if you want to add something, you can unmute your mics and add, or you can type in the chat box, and I will be monitoring the chat box as we go along in case anyone types. So I hope everyone is able to use their microphones so just let me know if you have trouble. I think I've set it so that everyone can use both microphones and cameras, but at the moment it's better if we just have me and the panelists on camera and everybody else. If you want to share something, just unmute, but raise your hand first so we don't talk over each other. So, I think we've started the conversation. I love the responses. I'm gonna ask one more question. Okay. What are some of the things that startups can do to start looking at finance instead of just looking at bookkeeping? Right? So a lot of startups will say, yeah, we're recording our transactions, we see what's happening, we're making, financial statements. So what are some of the things that we can do in order to take it to the next step, right? Next level, because those are just basics that you can cover, mostly accounting. But how do you go from there? How do you now use this information to help you guide your business, to help make business decisions? What are some of the things that small businesses can look for?
Okay, I can go first. So I think first is take bookkeeping, for example, especially if we're looking at the Gambian context, right? You're talking about very small businesses, startups, they can't afford much. They cannot even afford sometimes to get a QuickBooks, subscription. So the basic thing is they use notebooks most of the time, or they're not keeping track of, which from experience that most of the people that come to us on the most time is they're not even tracking anything. They don't know which product sells best. They don't know what their profit margins are. They don't know their ROIs, etc. So yeah, I think definitely, yes, starting with the QuickBooks is number one, to say, okay, at least not QuickBooks, but bookkeeping in some sort of way is a start. But then going further, as I always say, if there's two things that you can invest in, especially as a startup or as a small business or existing business, would be number one, your accountant, getting an accountant, an external accountant, see if you can hire somebody that can do your books for you. So you have the free time to really create and be, innovative in your business, to grow your business as that person, because sometimes you cannot do all. And I think those are one of those things that you definitely want to outsource if possible, if you can afford it. And then the second is always getting an attorney. So, if you get into trouble, any other things, giving you the right advice, it's very, very important. So legal and, accountant or finance help. But so let's say you get a bookkeeper and they give you your financial statements. Let's say at the end of every month, you have your balance sheet, your income statement, cash flows, etc. What do you do with that information? What does that really mean? Does it look at your equity to say, okay, I can take this equity, reinvest it back into the business. I can reinvest it into my professional growth, whatever else that the business needed in processes, etc., to make it better? Or do I look at it and say, okay, now do I have enough cash to say, okay, I can invest in another business? Might be, Lamin's new startup that, you want to take in and take a dive in. How do you really look at the financials to know that you can really afford? What are you keeping track of? But I think to go back into the context of the Gambia, you even have to start, because again, I mean, you're talking about notebooks, and once those notebooks are gone, they're really gone. To have the key historical finances and knowledge, to have that, to be able to budget, is even a difficult task. So having that, I would say, a habit really of budgeting, I think that's one that's very, very important. And then looking at ways to have the residual income. What does that really mean in this case to reinvest it back? So, Lamin?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like I was said, start bookkeeping. It's a very brilliant start. I mean, you can't know what you don't measure. So having a good bookkeeping in place, whether it's done internally by yourself, or if you can afford to hire an accountant or a professional who can do that for you, it's always a very good start. But I think then taking a step further from that, the whole essence of recording information, it's to be able to draw insights that would help you to make inform your business decision making. And I think that also should always be on the top of the mind of the entrepreneur. You should be able to link the outcome of those reports to business milestones and understand what is working and what's not working. Right. So the whole essence of the report should be to give the entrepreneur that opportunity to really reflect on the business and try to tie back all those key metrics in the report to specific business milestones. And then in addition to that, like I mentioned, obviously it's important to understand what's the residual cash in the business and how you kind of handle that. Do you want to reinvest that back into the business? And if you do, what on which specific areas are you going to reinvest in? And these are things that should be informed from the report itself, right? Because ideally you should be able to see the margins if you have different components or different areas within the business itself. You can see the margin of the various products that you are selling, for example, and that should help you understand where should I put back this residual cost on, right? And then obviously, if you are unfortunate to be in a situation that you have a little to take out of the business, that's not necessarily bad, because as an entrepreneur, in most cases, all our wealth is concentrated on one single thing, which by definition means we take a lot of risks. So it's nice when you have that opportunity that you can diversify a bit. Then you can spend some of the residual cash in external things that could help you diversify your risks a bit and make sure that if things do not go very well, you still have some other options to fall back. But I think to kind of really hone down, it's that the report itself should be kind of a basis for reflection and being able to make sure that they inform your decision making going forward in the business. Right.
All right, thank you very much to the both of you. Very well noted. Does anyone in the participant list want to add anything? Anybody else want to add something outside of the panelists? Okay, does anybody have any questions? Okay, I'll ask another question then. Okay, since we're in the finance realm, I know lots of small businesses, one of their main challenge is they always say, we need money, we need money, we need money, we need money. What's our challenge? We need money, we can't do anything. So what would you advise a startup who comes to you and says, hey, you're a finance professional, I need money for my business, I want to expand, I want to buy new products, I want to even get money just to make my product. So I want to be able to do run some operations, but right now I'm stuck and I need money. How can you advise me? What are some of the ways businesses get money to fund their activities? And what advice would you give that specific example I just had? Because when you do surveys in Gambia, when you're running these entrepreneurship programs, a lot of businesses would ask you, if they would love to have some funding, some free money, but when that's not possible, what are some other ways, other things that they can look into? Because we know there are many ways that businesses can fund their operations, but I'll let the finance professionals give us some insight. I think this is something that most people are probably going to be interested in when they watch this video. Then on a separate note, I think ITAC Secretary, if I'm not mistaken, that's Menge, would say, had a question also. Any advice on pricing? How do you properly price a product? Is there a specific formula one should follow? Okay, but that would be second. So first, my question, how do you, what advice can you give to businesses where capital is one of their issues? And then you can answer the pricing questions after that. So feel free to be as thorough as you can.
Yeah, I can start with that. I mean, I think even before answering the potential sources of funding, we can take a step back and kind of start with the question, do you really need funding? I think that's something that most of us as entrepreneurs really missed. It happened that just a couple of weeks, I have been working with a startup with an entrepreneur from Nigeria. And then we had a conversation, and I was like, he was looking for investors, and I asked, what are you going to do with that money when you raise investment? And he started explaining the things he wanted to do. And from that conversation, I understand that what he definitely needs, it's not money. He needs network, and he needs people that have the competence to complement whatever competence that he has in order to build a minimum viable product, something tangible that he can go on to investors and be able to show what it is that he needs the money to scale on. So I think that's always an important question to ask. Why do I definitely need money, and why do I need money, right? Because whenever you approach investors, that's the first question that you need to answer to them. Yeah, and then I mean, if you talk about the sources of funding, there are multiple sources available to startups depending on where you are in. Obviously, the early stage financing ecosystem looks quite different across different places. If you looked at it from the context of Gambia, I think if the best possible source of funding, obviously, it's always the internally generated one, the money that you make from your customers. If you are fortunate to have that potential, I think all that should be the focus in the beginning, if it's possible. That am I able to have something to sell to my customers in order to get revenue to even invest more and be able to produce more to sell more. If that's not the case, then obviously for many entrepreneurs, the starting point is from friends and family, trying to harass them and try to get your hands into their pocket and get some money to invest on your idea. And it's usually nice because it comes with less pressure than, for example, if you would go for external investors. Then also, obviously, there are a lot of, I think, especially if you are from places like in the developed world, I think there are a lot of soft funding like grants of different kinds. And I think some of those things are becoming accessible to startups in Africa. There are specific programs, for example, in the Nordics that are targeted to startups in developing worlds that are addressing different challenges, especially climate challenges. So I think those are also some potential sources of funding that's available to entrepreneurs. And it happens that in most cases, this kind of soft funding, it just requires a lot of desktop research, right? There are these opportunities out there. The point is, how do you discover them, right? You could discover it through friends and family that are outside that knows about these opportunities. But I mean, also on your own, you can't do as much research as you can try to. I mean, Google, there is always an answer from Google. So you can do a lot of desktop research to discover these kind of opportunities. And then another source, obviously, it's angel investors. So people who have a bit more wealth than what they need, and they are looking to invest that wealth, that are the excess wealth into innovative startups. This is always usually a very good start because it happens that most of the time angel investors are also entrepreneurs themselves from the past. So because of that, they have a bit more patience than institutional investors. but also they know the hustle of building something from the ground, right? And the pain of that process, and the fact that things do not necessarily go right in all cases. And then so it requires a lot of patience. So I think that the angels are also quite a good source of funding, especially in the developed markets. In Gambia, I'm not sure how much that is the case, and I hope that it would start building up as people with much more wealth than what they need, obviously, look ahead and to investing in innovative ideas. Then obviously, as a startup, I think one of the most well-known ones, and that is accessible as you grow and scale, is VC funding, where you kind of look for institutional capital. Obviously, it comes with quite a lot of pressure, because those people are professionals whose main business is to make money for whoever is the limited partners that invest in those funds. So ideally, to be eligible or to be suitable for VC funding, you need to kind of have a basis to scale the company quite quick, because obviously they have less time, usually between 4 to 5 years, in order to exit the investment. So these are the different sources. I think obviously when looking for investment, and that's something I learned, given that we've recently closed our pre-seed round. And I think what's really important is that you have a good understanding of what is the right investor for me, right? What does an investor comes in addition to their money? Because obviously it's nice to get the money to fund the business, but ideally you would also want to tap into other resources from the investors, maybe their network, maybe their knowledge or their expertise in specific areas. So I think that's also something to always keep in mind when you approach investors, but also if they have a good understanding of the market that you are addressing or the problem that you are addressing, because the more likely that they understand the problem you are solving, the more easy it is for them to make that decision to invest or to be able to see the opportunity that you see in that specific market. So that's it. I think it's to summarize, it's always good to understand if you really need funding, and if that's the case, to kind of figure out what's the ideal type of source that I should be looking at, given the stage that I am, and then try to kind of utilize and always, obviously, always look within your network, right? Because even when looking for investment, it's much easier to kind of get attention from investors when you are referred by someone who kind of know them, right, through networks than call emails or kind of just randomly reaching out to people, right? I think I'll stop there and let.
Thank you.
All right, Lamin, that's good. Good feedback. So I'm coming at it in addition to what you've covered. I always say that here's let's put now into Gambian context, since we're talking with majority of entrepreneurs in the local context. Everything that you spoke about, Lamin, I can totally relate. If I was in the United States, if I'm in Europe here, those are the things that obviously you're talking about, angel investment. Right now, it just so happened. I can see, Mohammed from Gain is also on the call. But that just happened maybe less than 2 years ago. Prior to that, it's maybe if we were lucky to get some sort of a grant or some sort of a pilot scheme loan in some sort of way. Some coming in from a westernized world, from in the United States, for example, and coming into the Gambia thinking, okay, yes, there are going to be challenges everywhere you go, right? So for example, coming into the Gambia, or anywhere you go into the world, you have the 3 C's as a challenge, right? So you have the capital. Access to capital is a challenge. Access to collateral, access to credit. I mean, we're not even going to talk about credit because in the Gambia there's no way to really track the credit. But collateral is an issue, especially for startups that are women. In the Gambia, in the context of collateral, is an issue because we don't have a lot of women owning properties. You do know that obviously you can access a lot of capital because of that. I always say, do not be afraid of loans. I don't know why people are so afraid of loans, but do not be afraid of loans. You can literally go to the bank and ask for a loan if you're a startup or your existing business. However, this is a challenge that we have in the Gambia. We literally have predatory lending because interest rates are skyrocketing high. People cannot afford it. We're averaging right now 23%, and central bank controls that. We cannot access payments So in payment processes. So even if you want to expand and extend your business into getting the diaspora market and market linkages to get the outside market in, we have the issues of not receiving, for example, PayPal is not accepted, et cetera, because they've closed, the gateway is not open of some sort. I know they're trying to work around that in some sort of way, but I know that that's still a challenge. So accessing capital definitely is an issue. It's an issue in the United States, and an issue here. There's lots that are available if you look at in a global context. Yes, there might be here, there, seed funding, so on and so forth, but we don't have, I haven't heard of one particular case, especially not in the Gambian context, where we have venture capitalists have been looking at our startups. I mean, we're talking about like they are in the lower investment in an angel investment that could go into that. I think some of the deals could actually be bigger, but we don't have that. We don't have the possibility. So to talk to the entrepreneurs, for example, that I see on here, what can I talk to them so they can actually understand? Get loans. There's nothing wrong with that. If you can afford it, get a loan. Do not be afraid, but understand the ROI, understand your finances before you tap into to see if you can really afford it. Aside from that, obviously what you shared, Lamin, I think those are great points, valid points. Look into family. Do you even really need it? Sorry, I was trying to read the ITAC secretary, what she's putting in.
Yeah, I believe.
So, you know, like, can you really afford that? Is it necessary? Because that's another thing too. Some people just think that I'm going to go into business, so I need the capital. So evaluate, like Lamin said, evaluate to see what kind of capital, what can I afford? What can I, you know, get myself into? What does this really mean? What are the terms? Another thing that's a disadvantage, I would say, in the Gambia is the terms are very, very disappointing and discouraging for entrepreneurs. So if you're looking for a long-term loan, they literally have short terms. Even with the loan schemes that you see that are available currently in the Gambia, they have, if you're lucky, a 12-month repayment period. You know, businesses cannot really make that profit to go around to say, okay, I'll repay that loan entirely in 12 months. It just doesn't happen. And most of them are short terms, 3 months, 6 months. When do you really have enough time and money to recycle, revolve, and being able to repay? So we do have those as challenges. I think what we need to look at is, you know, bringing in different type of funding in the Gambia. Currently, obviously, we have the angel investors. We have some here or there. You might be lucky to have a grant, small scheme grant that you can access. Obviously, the loans that there, Reliance Bank, I know they do a lot of small business lending, but the interest rates really are not the best, not favorable. The terms are not favorable. And then, you know, just borrow. I think a lot of people do the susus, something like that, where, you know, they do with the family, then it's your turn to take money and so on. And those things work. We've known that it's work in our communities. And I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs that have done that. I know that crowdfunding also came into the country. I think it's been a year and a half ago now, where I think Thunder Fund has been doing a lot of work around crowdfunding, but it's still a new concept. A lot of entrepreneurs don't understand it. They just, you know, it's like, I'm begging, and I'm like, no, that's not the concept. So understanding that is really different. Now, to answer the ITAC secretary, because I'm not sure if it's Manga or not, but whoever that is, I think you talked about the cost. How do I set up a cost or something like that? Pricing. There you go, pricing. And I would say really it's just pricing. When you think about it, how do you, there's a formula, but really your formula is looking at your fixed and your variable costs. If you add all of that, then obviously put a price, your profit margin. Oh, yes, it's Manga. Okay, so put your profit margin, and then there you have it. So you decide that. The only thing is in the Gambia, unfortunately, there's price gouging, and so there's no regulation on price. So people can post today. There's a sardine costing you $50, and next month is $100. So it's not, they're not regulated. However, if you as an entrepreneur, how do you really, you know, price it? It's really your fixed cost, variable cost, thinking about your cost of goods sold and creating a profit margin around that, and to say, okay, is this enough? that's pretty much the only formula that I can think of in my head. So unless Lamin, you can put me, like there's some others, you know, but think about your profit margin and then come up with the pricing.
Okay, Lamin, you want to add to that before I ask my next question? I have one right here.
Yeah, I think I was said it all. I mean, you have to cover your costs and have a reasonable profit margin that kind of sustains the business, right? But something I want to add about the loan comments that Awam made, and then obviously here relying on my experience working on the credit within the credit sector for about 4 years in the country. I'm not as very optimistic about lending for at least for startups. Maybe small businesses, it's a bit different. Like you are, because I think like you rightly said, the interest rates are quite exorbitant. But also, I think the lending schemes that are present in Gambia are more for working capital financing, and not necessarily to finance things that are kind of, you need the long run view on it. So I think like personally working as a credit officer, and then becoming a regional manager, I think I've seen a lot of people made that mistake, basically run their businesses because of credit. Not that the business is good, but there is this mismatch between the cash inflow and the cash outflow to credit payments. So I think that's something that small businesses, but especially startups, because in most cases as a startup, you don't necessarily have cash inflows for quite some time. So I think bank loans should be something that they are quite cautious on. I mean, you have to look at the interest rates and make sure that you are able to cover it from your profit margins. And like I was saying, like I think average interest rates are between 20 to 30%, and it means that you have to have a profit margin that goes beyond that for it to make sense, right? But in addition to that, you also need to understand the cash flow timing aspect of it, understand whether you are able to generate cash flows to be able to pay the bank based on the times that you agreed on.
Yes, thank you both. I think the conversation is getting juicy. Definitely, I'm enjoying it. You know, we have a question from Mohammed C, and he asks, what can be done to regulate prices in the market? And remember, I still have my question, but I'll you know, I'll let that one go first.
For me personally, and then maybe Lamin, because you worked in the credit sector in the Gambia, maybe you know something that I don't. But in the United States, for example, there are laws and regulations that actually regulate that, the pricing in the market. So I'm not sure in the Gambia if there's a particular ministry. I would think finance, but then it might be GAIPA, it might be another sector within the Gambian government that should be regulating pricing. So I'm not sure in the Gambian context, but that's actually a good question, because then maybe we can find out what in the, you know, within the Gambia, unless Lamin, you know the answer, because I really I don't know which agency does that, but I know from experience it is actually the government. Okay, you wrote Pura. It should be Ministry of Trade. Okay, then that's good, because I thought Pura does the internet or data or something. So it might be trade, correct?
They're the regulatory body, but of course the Ministry of Trade works with them, and they you know send out you know schedules for whether it's taxes, whether it's pricing of goods, because Ministry of Trade of course is more you know it's lives it. I mean they're more. They get all the first-hand data, because you know when there's imports and exports you know that come in, and of course you know the duties keep fluctuating, especially when they're you know when the COVID started. You know we already had a port that was too busy, but that's a topic for another day. Don't worry, coming soon. But yeah, we have you know we had just one port to receive stuff, so if there's any issue, there's delays, and then of course with COVID restrictions, you know the imports rates just went up, right? So price of goods also had a hit because of that. So you would see a lot of traders would tell you, I had to pay this much to get my container out, my supply out, so of course I'm gonna have to increase my prices to cover those you know extra costs that I had to incur because of that. But yeah, there are regulatory bodies, but again, of course, a first step for anyone trying to, you know, learn about regulation would be, go and visit the Ministry of Trade and then PURA to see what can be done. Because at the end of the day, it all boils down to what policies they create. Because as you know, we've seen a lot of times where there are regulations, but the business people, some of these traders don't adhere to them, especially during Tobaski period. I mean, think about price of sugar before and after Tobaski. I mean, or during Tobaski. I mean, it's ridiculous. People are making a killing. I mean, this is a religious, festivity or activity, and so you would think most of them would want to help people to celebrate something, but no, they make it difficult for people. So like there's lots of people in Gambia that don't even kill a ram anymore. That used to be everybody's, had an access to it, but I know lots of people now don't even bother killing any sheep anymore. They just go buy meat and cook the meat, and that's it. Call it a day. Kill a chicken. So it's become, so lots of things that we had before now, have become ridiculous when prices are not regulated in the market. There's another question from Mukhtar. He says, should there be a price regulations in a free market economy?
I can start with that. I mean, that's quite a contentious topic. I mean, I'm a big fan of free market, but I think also free markets are on the premise of having a frictionless market, right? A market where there are no frictions that kind of, prevent the mechanisms that are necessary to kind of, make sure that there is always equilibrium in the market. And I don't think that kind of premise exists in Gambia, right? There are a lot of frictions. I think one key thing is information asymmetry, for example, right? I mentioned about the fact that it's very hard to understand what are the basis for the prices that we are seeing in the market, right? And I think there are the taxes, there are regulations and corruption, perhaps, right? Because ideally, if you in an ideal situation, you shouldn't be able to have a specific good in the Gambia being so expensive, while it's more or less the same time it's being sold in Senegal, right? Because in a free market, then someone would have imported that in Senegal, sold it at lesser price, makes a quick profit out of that, and then everyone else would bring down their prices because all of a sudden they are losing clients, right? And those are some of the premises that free markets are based on, that competition is there, people can access capital to arbitrage in efficiencies in the market, but I don't think that those are the circumstances in Gambia, for example. And so it's a debatable topic. I think any opinion would be kind of quite subjective. But I think in an ideal situation, I'm a big fan of a free market, just that we do not have the necessary conditions in Gambia.
I can definitely echo your sentiments. It's one of those topics that you can sit down and talk about for a long time, because even if you're looking at it from a United States standpoint, there's definitely free market or free economy or free market economy. But the issue is, again, in some sort of way, there's some sort of regulation, at least, not to make sure that there's no price gouging. In the Gambia, it's very difficult, and I understand the market, the demand and so on, but still, like, obviously, like Sareen mentioned, it's sugar, it's the ram season or whatever, and so they price gouge it just because it's that intention. So, but I think it is just one of those topics that you can really look at the pros and cons. But yeah, I'll definitely echo what Lamin mentioned.
And Menge added, the issue with prices really comes down to taxes. What do you guys have to add to that?
Lamin worked in the Gambia longer, so I'll have him answer the tax, because I'll rather not be too negative. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Like, I'm not really sure if that's the situation, because I think one of the commodities that's facing a lot of price instability in the country is, for example, rice, which is kind of an essential for many Gambians. And then some time ago, I had an interview by the president when he said that taxes on rice have been reduced to almost zero in order to make it cheaper. If I remember correctly, I'm not sure if my memory is serving me well here. But if this is the case, then it's kind of evidence that even taxes taxes are not necessarily the only thing that's affecting this price hikes in the country, right? If the taxes on rice could be zero and still the price is so unstable, it's quite hard to say. I think it's a hard question to answer, really.
So I had Menge reply, not the case. Menge, would you mind unmuting and share something?
Exactly. I would be very interested to hear.
Yeah, we're interested to hear your feedback. Yes.
Yeah. Hello, guys. The conversation is really, really interesting. You know, when I was working in the private sector, this was really, I don't know, it was a blur to me. But now that I'm in the public sector, it makes sense why things work the way that they do. With prices, I'm going to recall the time that we tried to influence the importation of poultry and poultry goods in the Gambia. So what happened was we said, okay, we're going to put a quota on all the importation of eggs so that like the local poultry farmers can, you know, expand their market and, you know, sell more so that they don't have to compete with imported eggs. What happened when we did that on the GAIPA and working with the ministry? So because there was a little bit of scarcity because there was no eggs coming in anymore, just the local farmers decided to say, you know what, there's scarcity, so now we're going to increase the price of like eggs, the crate of eggs. So from 140, it went all the way to 190. So the government was like, see, this is why like we don't listen to you guys, because when we try to help the Gambians, farmers see that as not an opportunity to grow their businesses, but rather like, okay, let's hop on this because there's scarcity, and then prices just go up. So it's very, very difficult. Also, through the ministry, there's really no clear database that really manages all the businessmen and women that bring goods into the market. So you can't really influence prices if you don't know who to really, you don't have direct contact with who to talk to. So, and the taxes are really, really high. It doesn't matter of goods, food, whatever. The government is just, I'm sorry to use this, but they're just lying. There's basically tax on everything. Custom when you're importing goods, like custom fees, like taxes, and then you have to bribe people so that it leaves the port early. Like all those charges that they charge these businessmen and women, they also turn around and just slap it on the goods. So this is the issue. And when you say you're going to regulate the prices, what people do, what businessmen and women do, is they decide to hoard their goods. So it's like, okay, now you don't want me to sell it for 200. Now I'm just gonna hide my goods, so we're not gonna sell. So, so then you create mayhem. So this is the issue. I don't think I don't think the problem is this. It's not a linear problem. Let me put it that way. It's not one problem. It's multifaceted. So, but I think taxes really play a very, very important role, and all these other extra charges that they keep on piling onto these businessmen, because bringing goods into this country is a nightmare.
I can completely agree with that one. Again, definitely echo those sentiments. I think for businesses that are bringing goods, there's huge taxes. For businesses that are doing business in the Gambia, we learned the hard way, and I'm sure you're familiar with that. You knew from the back, and I'm sure Malik could even elaborate on it. The taxes that go along, that they tag along, understanding how businesses let's just say that doing business in the Gambia is very expensive. If you're doing it the legal way, which I encourage everybody to, if you're doing it the right way, it's very expensive. That's my final. That's my final.
Thank you. Yeah, so don't worry, we will make sure we have a special platform for GRA coming soon. We'll sit them on a chair and see what they can tell us about what their plans are, because I'm sure, you know, some people there are trying to see what to do, and as even Mega shared, yeah, they do try some strategies, but sometimes it backfires. And it boils down to what Menge said, data, lack of information, lack of data. And this is not just with GRA or with government. In the business, you know, there's a lot of unregistered businesses. there are a lot of people that are registered also, but not listing everything that they're selling. So if you're trying to regulate, to put regulations, or even what Menga said, if you're trying to, reduce imports because you think there's, the market can meet the need or meet the demand, but you don't know, how many people exist in the market, what are the players, how much produce are they bringing into the market to cover that need. So at the end of the day, data, it boils down to data again, which is part of tech. So we need some of these techies to come up with ways that can facilitate that. But coming in September, we're going to be, we'll have some a time to talk about also someone from the registrar's office, the business registration. Why are lots of businesses not even getting registered? They're avoiding it because of some of these situations that have arisen. But now I don't want to go too deep into that because we are here to talk about finance. So I just wanted to, since I know a little bit about what you do, Lamin, so I wanted you just to tell us a little bit about Bantaba. So just tell us, because you did not, you introduced yourself, but you kind of just overlooked it. And I want you to speak about it, because especially when I asked the question about, funding a business, right? So tell me more about the Bantaba. Why did you leave it out? I was hoping to hear a little bit about it, because, that is something, anyway, I won't say, I'll let you say, because I was thinking that was part of the agenda.
Absolutely, absolutely happy to discuss. I actually did a small pitch for Hawaii, and I guess that's why I kind of it escaped me. Yeah, but like I said, I'm right now an entrepreneur. I just co-founded a startup that I've been working on in the past 1 year, and we've just recently launched our beta product. And in essence, it's a person that kind of turns into a project and now becomes a startup, right? And what we are trying to do is to essentially mobilize the diaspora's resources for the startup ecosystem on the continent, right? And we are looking at two things here. We are looking at knowledge and network that I think is super important. A lot of people in the diaspora have very important knowledge, and one of the advantages that we have is that we've seen both sides of the world, right? We know we are from Gambia, obviously, or in Africa, and we know what works there, but we've also been outside and we see what are how other people are doing things differently, right? And I think this knowledge is something that could be quite valuable to the ecosystem in Africa. And then the other thing that we are trying to help is here also, it's obviously access to networks. So if I can't necessarily invest in your startup, I might know people within my network that could find your startup an interesting case for investment, and I can connect you to these people in my network. Then the other aspect, obviously, is the funding part, which is also quite important for startups. And this is what we are trying to do. Our starting point has been focusing on the knowledge transfer aspect of it. So we have a digital platform where startups in Africa can create a page, and in doing so, they can pitch their ventures, so they can describe the problems they are solving, what impact that makes on the community. But also, more importantly, we ask them about their talent needs. Are they looking for people with expertise in specific areas? Is it mentors? Are they looking for consultants, or are they looking for people to advise them on specific issues, right? And then on the other hand, we have the diaspora that can create a profile, and when they do, we try to understand their background, their area of expertise. But also we ask them about their interest to engage with startups on the continent and what type of engagement that would be. Do they want to mentor? Do they want to do consulting for a startup, or are they there to look for potential investment opportunities in the ecosystem? And then what we do then is to use this information to match the startups with people in the diaspora that are in a position to support them in their journey, right? So a startup, for example, from Gambia that's looking for someone with a data science competence, for example. When you log in, you would be able to see one of my developers, for example, in Taiwan, is a data scientist actually from Gambia, and he has built a lot of experience. And he is on the platform as a diaspora. So as a startup in Gambia looking for someone with data science background, you would be able to see that there is who is originally from Gambia, now lives in Taiwan, and he has a background in data science and is willing to support a startup, right? And you can interact with them within the platform itself to understand how they could help you. It's a work in progress. Right now, we just launched the beta platform itself on June 30th. So slightly less than 2 months now. As we speak, we have, I think, 55 startups from the continent that are on the platform. Two of them from Gambia. One is Innovate and one is Outbox Media Analytics, and one other startup that I don't remember now. And then we have around 120 people in the diaspora that are interacting with these startups. And essentially, like I said, the whole goal here is to mobilize the resources that are out there in the diaspora for the ecosystem. Because if we want to change, if we want to build the Gambia or the Africa that we want to see, we need to support the startups that are solving different important problems and challenges in the society. So like I said, our phase one is to focus on the knowledge transfer aspect, connecting the startups with people in diaspora that have the competencies that could be useful to their ventures. But then in the very medium run, our plan is to have a crowdfunding service, but instead of a reward-based one, it would be an equity-based crowdfunding. We are obviously looking at which side of the market we should position ourselves. Should it be not necessarily people investing 1,000 euros, but perhaps 5,000 euros or 10,000 euros in startups? And obviously, in this regard, we would be working with ecosystem enablers in the continent. We've already have an agreement with one of the leading incubators in Kenya. And that's where we would be starting on the fundraising part, where we have these local ecosystem enablers doing validation on the startups. And we also have a legal consulting company that would do legal due diligence on them. And after that, they can come onto the platform and launch fundraising campaigns. And these campaigns will be accessible to the diaspora. And they can choose to invest in startups that they find interesting. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. See, you're just holding out. So we won't have that. Now I think everybody has heard. Yeah. So thanks for sharing that. I mean, you kind of did overlooked that. So I just wanted you to at least tell us a little bit more about what you do. So Mukhtar has a question, but before that, it is 3 minutes past the hour. So I'll ask the question. Are the panelists okay to go till half past the hour, or does anyone need to do a closing?
I'm okay.
You okay, Lamin? Okay, then we'll go till half past the hour. We have 26 more minutes. So we have a question from Mukhtar saying, can you please talk about debt versus equity for startups in the Gambia?
I would say that, I think I touched on that, especially with Mukhtar during the Undernode program. But if you look at debt, cost of debt is actually cheaper than cost of capital, because cost of equity, sorry, because you have to remember that as debt is something that you're borrowing to repay, as equity you're giving up a portion of your business, right? I mean, you in essence literally giving up or selling a portion of your business in terms of equity. So it just depends what it is that you're looking for at that time, depending on what your investment. And I'm sure, Lamin, I think you said that you've raised capital for your startup. Maybe you can explain the type of capital that you've raised in this context to see if they can learn from that. I'm definitely open to both. It just depends what you really need. It's not like, oh, this one is better than the other. It just depends at that time as a startup or as an entrepreneur, what is exactly that you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I don't think it's a binary choice, right? It always depends on your context and your situation. Like you said, I mean, we just raised $500,000. That's 4.5 million Swedish crowns. Yeah, I mean, but that's equity capital, because in the phase that we are in, we are building kind of a marketplace business model. So our focus is building a community and not kind of immediately monetizing. So it makes a lot of sense to have equity, which, like I was saying, it's slightly more expensive because we need to part away with some part of the company and give it to some other people. And obviously it comes up with a lot of control and a lot of accountability. But then it's more ideal for the situation that we are in, because we know that in the next 12 months our worry is not necessarily generating money in order to kind of pay back, if it was a bank loan, to be able to pay back the bank loan. So I think it always depends on the situation and the business model at hand. For technology companies, it's usually almost always the case that in the beginning, you don't make money. You are more focused on investing and kind of scaling and building a user base or a community, depending on the type of business that you have. And in that case, I think equity is more ideal, right? Because if you take debt and you are not able to meet up the cash flow requirements, even if it's a good business, it might end up killing the company, because you have a contractual obligation to give someone else money back, right? So that's something that I think, it's something that is always important to reflect upon. So if you are a tech company, I think in the start, you just want to find product market fit, try to scale your business, build the user base. It's more ideal to have equity financing. Obviously, it comes at a much higher cost, like I've said before. Then, if you are a small business that's already generating some cash flows, I think it makes more sense to choose debt financing, because then you have cash flow that's coming in, and even better if those cash flows are predictable, because then you can kind of really match the timing of your cash outflows and cash inflows, and then you can be able to kind of meet the cash outflow requirements of the debt and not have to give away from the company, part of the company. So I think it depends on the type of business that you specifically do. If it's a small business that you make a product and sell it out in the market in this, I think debt financing is kind of a more ideal choice and less expensive one, obviously.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Because there's another question as well. It says from Chinaman. He says, "Hello, is it on a best interest of a startup to take a loan or invite investors in your business?"
I think Lamin covered it, and I covered it. I think it just depends on what you're looking for and the business model, the time, the right timing to really look at investment to come in. But I would say in this case, if I'm looking at what he wants to do, depending on if you're expanding, obviously, he has a barbershop. Maybe he wants to do 10 barbershops to becoming a chain from Gambia to Senegal. Obviously, then that you might want to look at an investor. But if you're looking into, I need to buy equipment, I need to get machinery or hair dryers for 2 of my locations, that might just, a bank loan would suffice that. So it just depends. You really need to look at it and understanding your business model and what your needs are at that specific time. Your growth stage. Are you looking into growing? What exactly are you predicting? That's why the notion of really budgeting, especially as a business owner, having budgets as an entrepreneur for profit business is very, very important.
Thank you very much. Okay. Any other questions from the participant list? We could probably take maybe 1 or 2 questions. Okay. There's another question from Makdar. First of all, he says, "Thank you. Is there any resource, or are there any resources that you can recommend for them to learn about equity for beginners?"
I'm actually going to challenge, because I think Gain is online. So I'm going to challenge Gain, Abubakar, Mohammed Barry. I'm going to challenge him if he's online to try to maybe do a crash course. So maybe do a crash course for entrepreneurs so that they really understand what it really means for equity. And at least from the local Gambian context, I think that would definitely be very important. If not, there's a lot of resources online that you can look up. I know that Harvard Business School has things that I've looked at in the past to just kind of teach you the difference between equity and equity and versus debt, or different types of equity. So on and so forth. So just and also the different types of investments, like investors, like angel investors versus venture capital is versus, bank loans and so on and so forth. So just take a look at all of that.
Okay, I guess we have a hand up and you can guess who it is. So I'll open the floor to Mohammed Aliou. Mohammed Aliou, the floor is yours. You're muted, by the way. Your microphone is muted. Mohammed Aliou, if you could unmute, if you don't mind.
Yes, sorry, I was struggling. The network is not very strong at my end. How are you all? Good evening from wherever you are. My name was already called, so I'm Mohammed Bari, Gambia Angel Investors Network. Definitely, this is something that we would really like to do. We currently have an investment series that we also hosting online, and this is really one of the topics. Recently, we did a few topics as well surrounding investment because we also want to really build the capacity around this within the ecosystem, and similar to what Sharon is doing, really also try to look at more on investment. So we have an investment insight on investment series that we are currently doing, and definitely one of the topics would be on equity that we can discuss. So I'll even talk to Gain MD so that the next event we can easily have this, and we would also like to get some recommendations from you all. If you know any guys that can also help in this regard, any other facilitators. I'm comfortable doing some of this, but really having also some of the bigger profiles, people that some of these entrepreneurs want to listen to, that also helps, because what we observe is that some of these events, when we organize them, although we are targeting everybody, but at the end of the day, you just find few people who attend, and that's not really always helping. So this is something that we also have planned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, really appreciate that. Hopefully we get to speak to Gain as well on this platform. So be on the lookout. I think I've sent an invite, but I won't call out anybody. But I think it's if as he rightfully mentioned, everyone's trying to build awareness, trying to promote resource sharing and networking for all the businesses. So yes, we can certainly collaborate, to get the message out to a larger audience. I love the website shared by Lamin. If you have not checked it out, check out the website he just shared, ycombinator.com/library. Ooh, lots of lovely videos for startups that explain a lot of these things. So Lamin, yeah, that's a good nugget you just shared. I just need some hot sauce. I will tear it up. So thank you for sharing. Love it. Yeah. So okay. Any other questions? Any questions? Yeah, I think
if there's another question, perhaps I just kind of respond to the comment that was made by the last speaker. I don't remember the name now. With respect to training entrepreneurs on
Mohammed Aliou.
Exactly, Mohammed Aliou. With respect to helping them train entrepreneurs on funding or valuation or understanding the choice between equity and debt financing. I'm super happy to help. I don't have that much of an impressive profile, obviously, unfortunately, but I've spent the last 2 years of my professional career working within VCs and mainly on valuation and stuff. So if you think I could help, I'm super happy to help in that.
Most certainly, we'll be calling on you, knocking on your door. Sekou has a question. He says, what advice do you guys have about building a team versus doing it on your own if that is possible? And Mokhtar says, thanks, Lamin.
I would say the advice that you have, I'm not sure if I'm understanding it correctly. So you'd rather build a team or do it yourself? Is it the work that you want to do on your own? So just because I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're trying to ask, but if it is, what's the right way to build a team? Just look at, again, looking at your business model. What is it exactly that you're looking for? What is it exactly that you need? Creating those profiles, making sure you have, the right job descriptions for them, making sure they understand the company, your vision, clarifying that. But again, it all depends what type of business that you, the model and so on. So, and if you can afford it, that's another thing too. If you can't afford it, because I'm just trying to see exactly if it's versus doing it on your own, kind of like, okay, should I do everything on my own or should I hire a team? So just to kind of clarify that, maybe I'm not answering based on what you wrote, but if it's not very clear, let me know.
Thank you. I believe, of course, the question could be in two contexts, right? He could probably be asking a question of, you have a startup, you have an idea, is it advisable to bring people on board to help you grow this idea versus doing it on your own? Or it could be what you just mentioned, how do you build a good team? And I think Lamin touched on that even earlier, when he was, I guess, one of the topics we talked about. Yeah, I think you mentioned about building a team, having the right people, because if you do sell some of your equity, yes, you do end up having business partners, but understanding what investment role they want to play, because you have silent partners versus active, right? So if you have an active partner who's going to not only invest money in your company, but also take on a role, versus someone who just wants to put the money and you do, put the money up and then you do all the work. So it all depends on, what type of agreement you have with this investor, right? Because there are some people who invest not only money, but they invest their knowledge. So part of, like, for example, a very successful person who has a good influence, good network, is very credible. If he joins your team without even putting in money, when he goes for a loan, when your company goes for investments or loans or for anything, you become more credible. So there are lots of things that people can bring to your table as a business partner, which is, not money, financial, right? So I think, I know we're all a bit confused about Seku's question, but I'm thinking maybe those are some of the things he's wondering about. So if it's about building a team, there are tons of ways that you can build a solid team. As a startup, of course, funding or financing or paying salaries, overhead could be a big challenge for some people. You might not have enough money to hire new staff. So there are a lot of startups that go with interns. You hire interns, or you hire consultants, or you outsource some services to other companies for a fee. And then you only outsource what you can afford. So there are many ways that you can build your team. But of course, if you're already a small business and you're well established, then of course, listening to what Awa was telling you, having clear, business, profiles, having clear job descriptions, knowing the people, knowing what needs to be done. So there's a lot that goes into that, building an HR team, because some startups don't even build an HR team. They outsource the service as well, because there are a lot of companies that do HR as a business. They recruit for companies, and they hire the right people for the companies. They'll take care of the recruitment. They'll take care of the interview. In some cases, they'll even help with the onboarding. So there are lots of ways in which you can address this. But I guess Seku just mentioned, thanks, you both provided good insight to both lenses, like you said, sitting. Okay, so I guess we've addressed it. Thanks, Seku. Yeah, I was a bit lost there for a second. So I was like, but glad that at least from all the rambling, some good came out of it. So and sorry for not understanding the question at the but while reading it at first. But I guess that's why it's always good to confirm. It's 21 past the hour. I don't want to go over time. Some of you might be itching to go out for your with friends and or even watch a Netflix or do something fun. So I'm not going to kill your Saturday. So I'm going to go ahead. What we can do now is we open the floor to one last question, and after that question, we'll go ahead with closing. So since our introduce first, we'll have Lamin close first, and then I will say maybe one or two things. We thank everybody, and then we close it. So we have one last question from Bubakar Bari. He says, when is the right time to expand to a neighboring country?
And the answer is really when you think you can afford it, and according to your business model, depending on the type of business that you're in, depending on your growth plan that you would create, that's when you think it would be a right time. I don't think I can just tell you that, hey, look at it next month or within 30 days. It just depends on your model and what you can afford at that time and when is the best time. I think you'll know it if you just create a growth plan for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I totally echo our point. I think, first there has to be a reason of expanding, which can only be that you've already exhausted the local market. So until you exhaust the local market, I don't think thinking of expanding it's kind of a good idea, because as a startup, focus also is super important. You don't want to be distracted by doing multiple things at a single point in time. So maybe first exhaust the local market, and then, like Awamary said, try to understand if you can afford expanding, right? Because the expanding in most cases require putting up some additional infrastructure in the new market in order to help you do business there. So that's something that you need to understand. But I think also mainly it's down to the business model, right? Or the type of business that you have. For example, in our case, it's a platform. Going from one country to another doesn't necessarily cost that much. Yeah, you need to kind of do some PR in the new market, try to build awareness and stuff. But then in terms of infrastructure, it's not much that of a burden to expand. While it's different, for example, if you would require to open a new shop in a new country, for example, where you have a lot of capital investment to make in order to expand. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. I think that's rightfully so. Bubakar Bari just made another comment, says, thank you all. And yes, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into expanding a business. So first question to ask would be, do I need to expand? Because there are cases where your current location, you don't have to go to another country. You could even start, let's say you're focused in a region. Gambia, we have many regions, and a lot of businesses are focused only on, serving the greater Banjul area. So before going to another country, can you first dominate in your whole countrywide? So expanding countrywide could be one of the things. But of course, as Lamin mentioned, if it involves more capital because of, the fixed assets that you might require, property, plant, equipment to just set up a new location, then certainly it would be a worthwhile, research to do and calculate what the cost is. Just like I was said, do you have the money to do it? Because yes, if the money exists, then it's a no-brainer. Also, another thing to consider would be studying the product that you have. Is it something that the other market you're going to is lacking, right? Is there a need for it? So identifying the need, and doing your analysis, your Porter's analysis, you're joining into, joining in a new market. So having, doing a lot of research would determine that as well. And also, if there are other players in that market that that can partner with you to facilitate that, because there could be other players in the market wherein they have a similar product, and then if you which is basically looking at mergers and acquisitions, like if you're looking to merge with another company that already exists, has all the fixtures, wherein you just add your product to their portfolio, based on a, of course, an agreement on terms that you guys can both agree with, then sometimes it could be worth to do that research as well, instead of trying to do the expansion totally by yourself. So you could take on a new form. But anyway, I don't want to say too much more. Hopefully there'll be lots more sessions that we can expand on a lot more of these topics. We have 4 minutes to go, so I think Malik's typing something. So while he's typing his message, we'll go ahead and invite Lamin to do his closing, and then we'll go ahead and invite and then I'll do my closing. And then, yeah, Malik was just sharing some more content. The Harvard University iLab. So it's on a YouTube that also got lots of interesting information. So make sure you check it out. Yeah, so that is something to look at. So I'll go ahead and open the floor to Lamin if you're ready, and then we'll go ahead and close. Lamin, floor is yours.
Yes, Sering. I mean, thanks a lot for having me here. It was really great to have this conversation with Awa and the rest of the people in the call. It's always nice to kind of have these discussions, right? And I think especially the entrepreneurs out there in Gambia, I think they are all doing great stuff. I told Awa that one of the things that makes me smile on LinkedIn is when I saw those photos from Disruptive Lab. Of young people trying to solve different problems, right? And I think that's what we need in order to kind of have the Gambia that we want. I mean, obviously, it's never an easy stuff. It's going to get tough. There would be nice moments, and then usually when people ask me how it is, I just tell them, I mean, it's just a combination of good and bad moments. Usually the bad moments are even much more than the good ones, but then you try to make sure that when there are the good ones, you enjoy them as much as you can and just keep working hard. Take it easy on yourself. It's always hard to build something from the ground. So it's the same kind of pain for everyone. It's not because you are not good enough or something. It's just the pain that it takes to build something from the ground.
Thank you, Lamin. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Awa, wanna?
Yeah, sure. So first off, obviously, thank you for having me. Pleasure meeting you, Lamin, and some of the other callers here. Lovely questions and great conversations had. Just quickly for startups, especially mainly in the Gambia, that are main street small businesses really that we work with, that are also on the call. I always say, my advice to you is, one is make sure that you set up separate books for your business versus your personal, because that's definitely been a challenge. We all know that you guys will have one bank account for your business and personal. So try to separate that, which is the number one advice. Second is please give yourself a salary. Don't just take money because you feel like you own it. Yes, you own it, but set up a salary that you can pay yourself, so you can at least put that on the side to know that, okay, what you can afford. Obviously, don't pay yourself $20,000 if you cannot afford that. Pay yourself $5,000 if that's what you can afford. That's the second. Don't be afraid of loans. If you can afford it, don't be afraid of it. That will be it. Looking into billing, making sure you keep track of your billing. I think that's really important to differentiate your books, making sure somebody's taking care of your books or however, but keep track of your expenses. That way you're looking at growth, expansion, all the things that you need to do. You at least know your valuation. If somebody was to value your business, let's say you're getting into a space where you're looking at venture capitalist or maybe angel investment and so on, you need to have good, at least books that you can know what your profitability is or not. And then final thing is, just make sure as much as you can, you invest in processes, invest in your own, yourself, your professional self, to make sure that you always creating the best business that you can and the best business model. And then that's it.
Thank you. We have a question from Sheikh Omar Job. I said no more questions, but let's just see one quick thing. Maybe each one can give him just one. It says, can you give parting shots on how startups can grow with investors while not overvaluing themselves and undervaluing an investor because they did not put in sweat equity. So, parting shots.
I'll let Lamin handle that since he's currently there right now.
I mean, I'm not sure I really understand the question in terms of overvaluation, but I will take it as overvaluing the company, right? I mean, I'm not sure if that's what exactly he meant. I think for many early stage companies, it's valuation, it's a super hard stuff. It's more of an art than a science because you are essentially selling a vision, right? It's in most cases, if you are early stage, it's usually a pitch deck and a team, and if you much better than that, then it's just a prototype that you have. So valuation, it's a super hard thing, and it's also a bit subjective. And if I'm an entrepreneur, my worry is not necessarily having the company overvalued. It's actually having the company undervalued because like we said, you are taking a lot of risks than the investors are. The investors invest across different companies, but all your wealth is based on a single company. And if that fails, it means that you take a very hard hit. So my worry as an entrepreneur is not necessarily overvaluing the company, it's undervaluing the company.
So what advice can you give a business, right? What advice do you give startups to overcome this barrier of over or undervaluing themselves when dealing with an investor? What can they do? Do they come and see someone like you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always good to talk to people who have experience in this kind of stuff, but I think it's also good to benchmark, and that's usually the most common approach within the very early stage financing space, right? You look at other startups that have raised capital doing something similar to what you do, and you look at the multiples that they've raised funding, right? And the kind of valuations that you take, because if you are in the same market and in the same stage, it's very likely that the valuation would be similar for all of you. So I think it's a very good benchmark is looking at similar startups and understanding how much money they've raised and at what valuations they've raised, and kind of use that as a reference point.
All right, thank you. Very good tips.
I got a question. I got a comment for Lamin. This is Pierre. You mentioned that undervaluing is something that some of the startups should pay attention to, but what about overvaluing as well? Because I think a lot of companies, startups, they have the vision, right? And sometimes in some cases, no proven product, right? But then they value their company at 2 or 3 or even 10x multiple. Why and how, right? So I think sometimes some of these startups are very ambitious, and while I appreciate that sometimes, I think sometimes they don't look at the end-to-end life cycle of how they're thinking through their business, right? To be able to say, okay, I think it's fair to value my company at X versus Y, right? Based on, where I'm going, based on sales, based on projections and things like that. So I think overvaluing is also quite a concern, at least from what I've seen. But just wanted to kind of get your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very important point. I think like investors also obviously have a responsibility to understand the fundamental value of the company, or the right value of the company, if we call it that way, right? And obviously, as an analyst in a venture capital firm, my main work is going through complicated Excel files, building different financial valuation models, trying to understand what's the right value. But really, to be honest, it's just doing a futile exercise, because at that stage there is a very, very low amount of visibility into the future, right? As a startup, like you said, you have a pitch deck and a team and maybe a prototype, no idea of the market, how long would it take to scale? So I mean, even if you would come up with a very complicated Excel sheets, it's more of a guesswork than kind of an informed analysis, right? It's not like if it's a company that has been operating for 5 years, then you have historical basis to kind of project the future. So I think, valuation in general, it's always a discussion between you, the entrepreneur and the investor, kind of until you agree on a point that both of you think it's fair, it's a fair deal, right? But notwithstanding, you have a very good point. I think as a startup, you should always avoid disappointing your investors, right? And what that means is that if you raise a round that you are overvalued, it's very likely that in the subsequent rounds, you're going to have a lower valuation than your first one. And that means that the investors that came along with you in the very early stage are going to lose money. And that's something to avoid as an entrepreneur, because obviously the first investors that invest in you are taking the biggest risk, right? It's kind of the most riskiest capital that you can take in. So ideally, when you do the next round, you want to do it at a higher valuation than the previous one, so that those investors are happy.
Indeed, yeah. Okay. Yep.
Thank you so much for sharing. Fair, good question, man. Thank you. Thank you to everybody that has been on the call with us. And Sekou says, looking forward to next Saturday, God willing. Great discussion. Thank you. Thank you, Sekou. Yes, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Awa. Thank you, Lamin. And hopefully we'll see you, both of you again. Could be on a similar panel or something totally different. But appreciate your time, your effort, and hopefully you enjoy a very beautiful rest of your weekend. I know I will. Until we see you again next Saturday. Thanks for all, everybody. Thank you again. And see you at the next Open Tech Convo.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Ciao. Bye.